Back to the channel. Today we're going to unravel some incredibly complex events in Genoa. Rumors are circulating around the Newman family, but what's the truth? In this video, I'll summarize the plot points that will be revealed in the next episode. Stay tuned to see what happens. Welcome back to our channel, everyone. Today is a truly wild day in the soap world, and we have an absolute mountain of drama to unpack. Grab your coffee and get comfortable because the latest events in Genoa City are going to leave your jaw on the floor. We are diving deep into the absolute chaos today, so let's just get right into it. So I just finished watching the latest episode, and honestly, my heart is still pounding out of my chest. I mean, we all knew Patty Williams was a ticking time bomb, right? We have been saying this for weeks. The fans on social media have been screaming it from the rooftops, but watching it actually play out on screen, it was an absolute bloodbath, and I am still trying to process everything that just happened. And it all starts with Diane Jenkins and Kyle Abbott walking through the front doors of the Abbott mansion. They just got back, they are exhausted, and they are wondering where Jack is. The house is quiet, too quiet. You know that creepy, heavy silence that always happens right before a soap opera drops a massive tragedy on us? Yeah, that kind of silence. And then they walk into the dining room. Oh my God, you guys, the dining room scene. It was like something out of a horror movie. Jack is lying there on the floor, and he is just in agonizing pain. He is losing so much blood. Blood is literally everywhere. Jack is so weak that he can't even yell for help. So he reaches up with whatever strength he has left and grabs the edge of the tablecloth. He pulls it, and glass shatters everywhere, crashing to the floor just to get their attention. The sound of that glass breaking was so jarring. It was brilliant directing, honestly. But it was just so hard to watch Kyle and Diane freeze. And then the sheer unadulterated panic sets in. Kyle is screaming. Diane is screaming. They rush over to Jack, and Diane immediately drops to her knees. She doesn't even hesitate. She just starts pressing her hands against Jack's wounds, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. Her hands are completely covered in Jack's blood. It is soaking into her clothes. It is on the floor. It is everywhere. And you can see the absolute terror in Diane's eyes. Say what you want about Diane, and I know she has a messy past, but in that moment, she was just a terrified wife trying to save the man she loves. Kyle is fumbling for his phone, his hands are shaking, and he dials 911. But here is the crazy twist. The dispatcher tells Kyle that the police and the paramedics have already been called. They are already on their way. Kyle is stunned. Who called them? Diane looks up, her hands still slick with blood, and she spots the bloody knife lying on the floor nearby. And it hits her like a ton of bricks. Patty. It had to be Patty. And if the cops were already called, that means Patty is probably still in the house. The realization that they are trapped in a mansion with a literal psychopath who just gutted Jack is terrifying. The paramedics burst through the doors, and it is just pure chaos. They are shouting medical terms. They are pushing Diane out of the way. Jack is fading fast. They literally have to start doing CPR right there on the dining room floor. The chest compressions, the panic, the monitors. They finally managed to stabilize him just enough to load him onto a stretcher and rush him out the door to the hospital. But the nightmare is not over. Not even close. Because upstairs, Patty Williams is backed into a corner. She knows the cops are swarming the property. And what does she do? She doesn't surrender. She doesn't run. She takes a sharp object and she literally cuts her own arm. Yes, you heard me right. Patty slices her own arm open. Why? Because she is a master manipulator, and she is setting up the most twisted frame job we have seen in years. She is going to blame the whole thing on Diane. I mean, what were the writers thinking? Actually, It is kind of brilliant in a sick, twisted way. Patty is unhinged, but she is smart. So Detective James Burrow arrives on the scene, and it is a complete circus. Patty comes running down the stairs, bleeding from her arm, crying fake tears, and playing the ultimate victim. She spins this wild, elaborate lie to Burrow. She claims that Diane is a complete lunatic. Patty says that Diane escaped from her therapist's care, went completely crazy, attacked Patty, cut her arm, and then took the knife and brutally stabbed Jack. She tells Burrow that Diane is completely mentally unstable and violent. And I am just sitting here yelling at my screen like, are you kidding me? But Kyle is not having it. Kyle steps up, and honestly, I was cheering for him. Kyle looks Burrow dead in the eye and tells a completely different story. He tells the detective the absolute truth. He explains that Dr. Lawrence Markham is a fraud, that Markham was holding Diane hostage against her will, and that Kyle had to personally go and rescue his mother tonight. Kyle backs up Diane's story 100%. He tells Burrow that they just walked in and found Jack bleeding on the floor. It is a classic he said, she said situation, but with literal life and death stakes. Patty is just relentless, though. She keeps pushing and pushing. She insists that Diane is a dangerous criminal who needs to be arrested immediately. She is pointing fingers, acting all terrified. Diane is losing her mind. She is covered in her husband's blood. She doesn't know if Jack is going to live or die. And she has to listen to this psycho accuse her of attempted murder. Diane calls Patty crazy. She says she just wants to go to the hospital to be with Jack. She needs to be with her husband. And Patty? Patty looks at Diane with this smug, evil little smirk and says, over my dead body. Well, that was the wrong thing to say to Diane Jenkins. Diane just snaps. She completely loses whatever tiny shred of control she had left. Diane lunges at Patty, screaming, that can be arranged. It was such a raw, visceral moment. You could feel Diane's rage. But it was also the worst possible thing Diane could have done, because Patty immediately cowers and points at Diane, looking at Detective Burrow like, see? Look at her. She is threatening me. She is violent. Patty argues that she is the victim here and that she should be the one going to the hospital to sit by Jack's bedside, not Diane. Detective Burrow has finally had enough. He screams, enough, at the top of his lungs. His voice echoes through the mansion, and everyone freezes. Burrow is getting a massive headache from all of this, and honestly, I don't blame him. He locks down the entire house. Nobody is leaving until he gets some real answers. But Patty is not done playing her twisted game. She dramatically points a shaking finger at Diane and tells the detective to look at the proof. She points out that Diane is literally covered head to toe in Jack's blood. And it is just so tragic. It is such a cruel, tragic irony. Diane is covered in blood because she was desperately trying to save Jack's life. She was trying to keep him from bleeding out on the floor. But to a cop walking into a crime scene, a woman covered in blood, screaming death threats at another woman, it looks incredibly bad. It looks exactly like Patty wants it to look. But wait, because it gets even worse. Patty doesn't just have a fake physical injury. She has brought props. She has brought receipts, fake receipts. But still, Patty produces this stash of evidence for Detective Burrow. She hands over these fake diaries and forged audio recordings that were supposedly created while Diane was being held at the clinic. And these faked records make it look like Diane was obsessively plotting to harm Jack. They make it look like Diane was planning her revenge against him. How did Patty even forge this stuff so quickly? The level of premeditation here is terrifying. She has been planning to frame Diane for a while, just waiting for the right moment to strike. And if the fake diaries weren't bad enough, Guess who shows up to corroborate Patty's insane story? Dr. Lawrence Markham. Yes, the sleazy, corrupt doctor who was keeping Diane locked up. Markham becomes Patty's star witness. He gives an official statement to the police, confirming Patty's lies. He tells Burrow that Diane did indeed escape his facility, that she has been showing severe signs of mental instability, and that she is highly dangerous. He completely backs up Patty's accusations, cementing the frame job. I can't even with this guy. Markham is so slimy. He is probably getting paid off by Patty, or maybe even Victor is pulling strings in the background. Who knows at this point? But Markham's testimony is the nail in the coffin. You have the doctor confirming the mental break. You have the fake diaries showing motive. You have Patty's self-inflicted wound showing an attack. And you have Diane covered in Jack's blood. And let's be real for a second. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Why might Detective Burrow actually believe this insane setup? Because of Diane's history. We all know Diane Jenkins has a rap sheet when it comes to faking crimes. Remember 2011? Diane literally faked her own death in the park with Deacon Sharp. She used a dead body from a morgue to frame Nikki Newman for murder. She let Kyle and Jack mourn her for over a decade. So when Detective Burrow looks at Diane's file, he sees a woman who is highly capable of elaborate, violent deceptions. It is the ultimate boy who cried wolf scenario. Diane is finally telling the truth. She is finally an actual victim, but her past is coming back to haunt her in the worst possible way.